Alrighty, welcome to everybody that is participating in this webinar. We'll obviously be getting started right now. As I mentioned earlier, if anyone's having trouble hearing us, please let us know as we're going through, or if there's any issues around the screen sharing. Otherwise, we'll press on and expect that everyone's got a good experience. Obviously, we are here today to talk about onboarding in the digital age, and we are particularly excited about this webinar as we've got our friends here from HROnboard supporting us. So we have Michael, who is the head of customer success at HROnboard.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here with you all.
And then we've got me. So for those of you who regularly frequent our events, I'm the head of client solutions here at Pure Learning. For those of you who are coming on the first time, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I absolutely hope that you find this webinar really useful, insightful, and you walk away with both some practical tips, but also a lot of questions in terms of, I didn't think of asking that, and kind of continue on. So we'll jump in and get started. So first off, employee onboarding. It's something that is a hot topic, but how important is it really? And I've got some stats around this. When you start to do a bit of a Google search around employee retention engagement, these are stats you'll come across. And the scary ones are 22% of staff turnover occur in the first 45 days, 47 in the first 90 days. Once someone's left an organisation, so you've lost them, it takes between 2 to 3 months, depending on role, to bring someone else to fill that role. So obviously there's a big time impact. There's a cost impact. Again, it's found that between, depending on the role, it can take up to 30 to 150% of the salary to replace someone, and that's finding candidates, the time that the HR team has to put together, interviewing. It's a really big piece. So obviously it makes sense to try and keep people on board with the organisation. And another scary fact is that there's an upward trend at the moment in terms of voluntary turnover. So it's risen only a tiny bit, only 0.5%, but it does mean that there's something happening that needs to be addressed. Obviously, we want to retain employees and not have them fly away. The other thing this set of stats shows is a lot of the turnover is happening very early on in someone joining an organisation. So there's something to it, it can't be ignored. The good news is that research has found that it has been found that new employees who went through a structured onboarding program were 58% more likely to be with an organisation after 3 years. So what that says, there's a tremendous value in structured onboarding. It obviously translates into long-term benefits for the organisation, and obviously it really makes that process of joining an organisation a lot better for the individual. So that's the good news, and I guess today we're here to talk about, okay, that's the good news, but how do we make this happen? How do we bring that structure to it? And obviously looking at both technology and learning aspects too, getting to that point of retaining your employees. So I'll hand over to Michael at this point, who will lead up the front end of the presentation, and he'll talk through some of the trends and some of the techniques and strategies they've seen in this space that provide a good experience for onboarding people. So Michael.
Thanks, Raf, and good to be here with you all. I guess the traditional onboarding challenges go across 2 different components of onboarding. And we'll go through these because really onboarding has 2 sides of it. We see one is the paperwork compliance side, called the vegetables side, and the second is on sort of the talent, the engagement and learning, or the ice cream side. And that analogy is, like I say to my son, he's got to have his vegetables before he can have his ice cream at dinner. And so the challenges with onboarding, especially in a digital age, transcend both of these sides. So let's go through a couple of the initial traditional onboarding challenges. So the first couple, and I've got a couple of slides here just going through these challenges, and they sit on both sides, the compliance and sort of the talent side. The first one we see a lot of organisations is the manual offer preparation. The time to prepare the offer, get it out to the new employee. Some organisations have inconsistent offers going out if they haven't got a centralised recruitment process or centralised HR operations team. And sometimes, if it is manual, it can take a little bit of time to get those offers out to the candidate. And in many industries, talent is still scarce. I hate to use the term, war for talent in inverted commas is still out there, but also people can be turned off by it. So there's a risk of losing your first choice candidate, but at the same time, that manual offer preparation takes time out of your HR team. People, some organisations I've worked at, they've had HR practitioners or administrative or coordinators having to spend a day or two a week just preparing offer packs. So instead of actually adding value to the organisation, all they're doing is paperwork, paper shuffling, or preparing electronic emails. And that leads directly to, I guess, a poor candidate experience. A lot of the onboarding packages we see, and a lot of the onboarding processes have numerous forms, lots of data duplication. If anybody's started a new job in the last few years, you'll have probably entered your name and address multiple times on multiple forms, one to go to the tax office, one for super, one for the HR payroll system, and it's just duplication, and it's time wasting, really. Slow turnaround of offer acceptance is another key one. It can take weeks sometimes to get offers turned around. We've got some case studies, which I'll hit on a little later this afternoon, just to look at that sort of turnaround time. And the other thing is sort of missing and incomplete information. If you've ever worked in a payroll team, you've received all the paperwork that's come back from new employees, and a lot of the time it's missing just important things that can delay them getting paid. So there's some of the traditional onboarding challenges. And in addition to that, we've got process inefficiency, and I talked through that and highlighted that a little bit. But it's the manual rekeying, it's paper-based processing. Again, being a practical sort of HR tech guy for about 20-something years, having worked in and out of payroll offices and seen payroll teams, if you've ever been into a payroll office, it is full of paper. Even in a digital age when we're meant to be all paperless, poor payroll offices are drowning in paper constantly. And same with your average HR person, they're drowning in paper. The other process inefficiency is when you're doing a non-digital type onboarding process, it's hard to know where's it up to. Has the candidate actually received the job offer? Have they opened it? Are they looking at it? Have they started to assess it? You've got no visibility there. And the other sort of process inefficiency we see a lot of is around reissuing of contracts or internal movements. A lot of organisations, every time you change anything around your existing employees, you've got to reissue contracts, and all of those process inefficiencies come back to haunt you. And then if we look at sort of the other ones, is employees are not ready for day one. Or their first day, instead of starting to be productive and starting to add value to the organisation, they're filling in paperwork on day one, or they don't have their desk, or they don't have a computer, or they don't have email set up. There's all of these provisioning things. And so basically, it's a bad first experience for the employee. And so this sort of highlights there's a gap in the most onboarding processes. Most recruitment systems, some of them will generate an offer, but there's this gap between after the recruitment system to the payroll. And we call that at HROnboard the onboarding gap. And really it's more than just paperwork. A lot of it, if you're an HR or a talent person, start thinking about this as an engagement problem. your employees are the highest or the most engaged the second you offer them the job. And from that point on, you've got this opportunity to drive them away or make them disengaged. And every interaction with your organisation, from job offer through to day one, first 60, 90, 120 days or first year, every interaction is an opportunity to disengage them. And that's really important because, as Rath said, people are your greatest asset, and those rehire costs can be really high. And Rath mentioned some of the internal costs, and if that's, let's say you lose a salesperson, that's actually top line revenue that your organisation's not getting. So how do you start to overcome these traditional challenges? I guess through digital onboarding, you're able to start getting offers out quickly, efficiently, and effectively. And what you're starting to do is starting to show new hires how much your company values its people. And that's really important. Again, if you look at traditional onboarding in inverted commas, now, years ago it was all paper-based. So now a lot of organisations are emailing things out. But if you think about if your process is currently paper of any sort, many organisations are spending lots and lots of money on employer branding, recruitment marketing campaigns to wheel in the best talent and going through the selection process. And then once you hire them or say, hey, congratulations, here's your job, the first thing we do is we give them a manual, archaic, paper-based, inefficient process, which is not the best way to show them that we value them and we value our people. Faster hiring means you get to fill more positions with first-choice candidates. That's sort of bread and butter, but it is really important. Getting people on and getting people engaged from day one is critical. And that's an often overlooked part of the process. A lot of organisations, and Rath's going to go on about sort of the post-day one engagement activities and sort of the induction activities. But that period between that gap, the onboarding gap, is a perfect time to start engaging with your new employees, getting them ready for day one so that they can start being a productive and, I guess, valuable member of your workforce. And the benefits, I guess, of doing that, Rath went through some sort of industry sort of stats. So some of the benefits, I guess, the big benefit we see from an HR onboarding side is reduced time to onboard. And I'll go through a couple of sort of, I guess, case studies just to help you sort of understand sort of where we see these sort of performances coming in. So we got a couple of our customers who've had dramatic improvements in time to hire. And if you think about that time to hire, that's just one metric of being able to engage with those employees. Breakthrough, which was an NGO, basically they reduced their time to hire from 212 hours to 36 hours. Basically, it's an 83% reduction in time to hire. Hitachi Machinery, it used to take them weeks to get paperwork back and to get things done. So their average time now is 3 days. And we've had other customers, we've had some customers actually that from them sending a job offer out through a digital means through HROnboard via email straight to the candidate and SMS, to the candidate having completed all of their day one documentation, tax file declaration, all of that compliance stuff, plus some of the ice cream, some of the engagement stuff, 23 minutes to being in the payroll system from offer, sending out the offer. That's huge benefit for organisations. Some of the other sides of this sort of benefit is through candidate engagement. Not only is it speed, but candidate engagement and showing candidates you actually care for them and sort of starting to engage with them from that, sending out the job offers, also really important. Here's another one of sort of our customers. Scotch College Melbourne. If you're a Melbourne-based organisation, you probably know of Scotch College Melbourne. They've been around for many, many years. They've got a long history, a great brand within the education market. And they've recently, like in the last month, put through 80 transactions for existing and new staff, existing staff and new hires. And basically, digital onboarding is allowing them to give a greater candidate experience. And that's a quote for a candidate that's recently gone through using the system with Scotch College, really easy system. And if you think about it, a lot of times one of the challenges with digital bringing systems into things is not everybody is a digital native. And so making sure that you're making it easy to use and engaging is really, really critical. And picking up on the whole engagement, the next really important thing which you can start doing with the digital onboarding process is you can start closing that communication gap between offer acceptance and day one. And there's this void. I mean, I've hired lots of people, and it's really funny because you speak to them on the phone, offer, so I can offer Raf a job and say, congratulations, Raf, you've got a job. We'll see you in 4 weeks. And he's all excited. I'm all excited. We send out the job offer. And in a lot of processes, that's the end of the communication. You've got this 4 weeks almost of silence, unless the person can start immediately. And that 4 weeks of silence is a perfect opportunity to start that employee disengaging. But the flip side is it's a perfect opportunity engaging with them and starting to get them ready for day one through potentially giving them tasks that they can start completing, be it things like reminding them to update LinkedIn to say that they're now joining your company, which is a great way to sort of promote your employer brand. And the other great way is to potentially start delivering them e-learning content, such as induction videos and so forth, that they can start consuming. They may not need to have consumed it all before day one, but it gives them that really good introduction. And that closes that communication gap. So there's some of the great sort of, I guess, challenges and some of the ways that you can solve them. I'll hand back to Raf to sort of pick up on that e-learning side of things and that induction.
Thank you very much, Michael. So yeah, as Michael mentioned there's a lot of activity that obviously happens before day one, and I guess the e-learning piece of the puzzle most commonly starts, someone's on board, they've joined an organisation, and e-learning comes into the equation, and that's then the consistent thing we see in the industry. They've joined the organisation, and great, this is an opportunity to serve up some content. When we talk to organisations, some of the common things we hear as their view of benefits for an online induction are things like consistent messaging. So one of the things is obviously organisations all around Australia, all around the world, but they do have one brand message, one mission, and one set of values that everyone's supposed to align with and, more importantly, connect with. So once you've got material that is online and is distributed to everyone, everyone gets the same message. Another benefit we often hear from organisations as identifying themselves is there's no induction lag. What I mean by induction lag is if, for example, an organisation has a strategy that is very focused on face-to-face, for example, the chances of them being able to have a face-to-face induction session for every employee when they start is low, and realistically, even if it's more frequent than every quarter, becomes unsustainable, both in terms of time investment, cost, etc. So what that means is you end up with new employees that start, and they might be in the role for 2 months before they're inducted into the organisation, and you get this induction lag. Obviously, if the induction's available online, it's immediate. There is no induction lag. Another benefit is you can complete this anytime, anywhere, and anyone can complete it. Which means that if you've got casuals, if you've got contractors, if you've got people on different sites, if you've got salespeople who are traveling a lot, all of a sudden these barriers that you'd commonly have around being able to provide someone with a really great induction disappear. For a salesperson, they're able to complete it, maybe in the hotel after they've had a day, even though they're 3 states away from where their head office is. For a casual, they're able to complete it before they start on day one. So it gives a lot of flexibility, and it takes away a lot of the barriers that you traditionally see if you've got face-to-face or paper-based. And the obvious one a lot of organisations identify is, hey, it's cost effective. We invest once and then it gets used over and over and over again. These are the common things, but something that is often overlooked is, okay, well, what is an online induction? What's the purpose of this thing we're just about to create and share with our new starters? And that question is something that leads to a lot of traps for organisations. And the reason for this being is, I'm echoing what Michael was talking about, is engagement. So every interaction with an employee before day one, during day one, first week, etc., is an opportunity to either build engagement or cause their engagement to go down. So the traps that most organisations fall into is they go, great, online induction. This is a really great opportunity for us to give all our policies to the new starter and tell them, read all of these, and then get them to tick a box that says, I understand this. It's a great opportunity to give them all our compliance training. Again, make sure they've done it, make sure they get a tick next to their name. It's a great opportunity to stroke a few egos in the business by having this enormous organisational structure where you click on everyone's name and you learn about what they do, and you discover that someone who's 10 tiers above your current role is this fantastic person. That's great, but maybe not practically relevant. Usually then there's some more policies. There does seem to be quite a love affair with policies, and really just getting a read this. We're not too fussed if you understand it, but we want you to tick that box that says, yes, I do understand it. Realistically, everyone's going to tick that box as I understand it, because if they don't, it's going to be a little bit of an interesting conversation. Ultimately, what it ends up being is it ends up being all stick, no carrot. There's nothing saying, hey, you've made the right decision, welcome aboard. There's pretty much, do all of these things or else. And by the way, you're responsible for making sure you do this, 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 and this. And if you do something silly, we're going to go, hey, no, not us. You end up sending the message to this new starter that all you're trying to do is shift responsibility. So you're shifting the responsibility of bringing them on board, educating them, making sure they know how to behave, making sure what the requirements of their role are, etc., etc., etc. You're just shifting all that responsibility onto them. And that's the message you're sending, which from an engagement perspective isn't particularly brilliant. It just shows that the organisation is more focused about covering themselves rather than providing a good onboarding experience, making sure the new starter has what they need, and making sure they're connecting with the brand, the values, and the mission. The trend we are seeing, which is exciting and kind of a bit of an about time moment, is that onboarding and inductions is moving away from being an event to being a journey. So rather than it being, welcome on board, here's your induction on day one, here's your compliance, this is your activities for day one, it starts to go, okay, we know that onboarding process is really 30, 60 days, and we don't have to have all the compliance done on day one. We don't need to overload these new starters with all this information. We can have a map of a journey, and we expect that, by month one, they will have understood all of this and they're comfortable with our values and understanding how they contribute. By month two, they've completed a bit more of the admin stuff. So to Michael's vegetables and ice cream, you're serving up those vegetables and ice cream over a longer period of time rather than kind of telling them, hey, here's your vegetables and ice cream, by the way, you've got a minute to eat them, and just expecting them to hoover everything up, and they'll get indigestion if they do that. So that's never good. So obviously, as Michael has said, I'm echoing this, is these initial days, initial weeks, and initial month is an engagement opportunity. That's what it's about. It's how do you get these people to really connect with the brand and ultimately make sure that at 45 days they don't leave, at 90 days they don't leave, and they are here with your organisation in 3 years. That's what you want to strive for, obviously. So what this means is, because it's becoming more of a pathway and a journey, there's all these components to an online induction. So the traditional one is, I guess, that corporate induction piece. This is the one that most organizations I speak to go, yep, corporate induction, we want to cover off X amount of messages, but on top of this, you've got to start thinking, okay, what are the other components that make up and can leverage online when I'm bringing someone on board? So obviously compliance training, that's something that can be online. Again, it's easy to reuse. You're able to serve it up to as many learners, and you're able to track their progress through it. There's the pre-day one, so that's obviously where HROnboard and all those sort of systems come into place. You're able to build engagement at that point in time. Site and department inductions. So obviously with organizations that are quite big and spread out, different sites and different departments are going to have different needs for onboarding a person. So there's going to be the core corporate induction, which is the same messaging, but then there's going to be, hey, on this site, here's some specific details you need to go. You know, stay away from the areas that are painted in red, and make sure you wear a hard hat. Is going to be something relevant to, you know, a site that's a mine, not so much relevant to someone who's an office worker. And to try and cram all of that into the corporate piece doesn't make sense, because you're going to disengage people who are in the office space, engage people who are not. It ends up being messy. So breaking it down a little bit and having these components is important. Resources. So obviously once someone's consumed material, give them something they can take away and use as a reference point. So, you know, be it a list of material they can take away and go, here's the basic sites you can go to learn more. If you are very keen about, you know, values and mission, give them a few printouts that they can put around their desk. So give them resources to connect them with the brand, and obviously job aids. In that first week, one of the biggest challenges a new starter faces is they're not self-sufficient, which means they're probably asking a lot of questions and asking for help a lot. Working out what are the core fundamental things we can support them in by giving them job aids makes that new starter feel more self-sufficient and straight away more valuable to that organization. And obviously this results in higher engagement. So what we're really trying to achieve with this, I guess, you know, all these materials, the online and the pre-day one, is we want to support the new starter. That's a really big piece. We want to support them and go, hey, you've made the right decision. Here's how we as an organization are going to help you integrate, connect, and become engaged. Setting expectations is another big one. There was some stats on one of the resources I went through before. Is one of the most common reasons people leave organizations is misalignment of expectations. And that be misalignment of expectations of management, of their role, of what the organization does. So it's a really good opportunity to make sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of expectations. Empower them to be self-sufficient. So that's what I mentioned around having the resources and the job aids and all those materials. It empowers them to feel like they're able to do things for themselves. Generally speaking, as adults, we don't like having to ask someone about a question every single time. Well, it's quite a fundamental task. And really it's all about give them the tools that they need rather than the material you as an organization need them to complete. That'll come naturally through them being in the role. Give them what they need to feel good about joining the organization, feeling empowered to complete their role in the first few weeks, and this allows them to be productive much, much quicker because you're empowering them to do so. So in terms of, I guess, an example of the ideal day one corporate induction piece, and these are the sorts of topics we advise should be included. So a welcome message. Obviously this is kind of fundamental stuff. Sometimes it's a message from the CEO, sometimes it's a wider message, some sort of message that says, thank you for joining this organization. You've joined it because we feel you're a good fit, this is what we're about, and all that. Welcome to the organization. It's I guess, something that's often overlooked as a formality, but it is very important. Talking about the company journey, so a little bit about the history, what's driven that journey, helps people better understand, okay, how has this organization arrived at this point in time? What's, you know, potentially driven the brand, the values, what have been some of the challenges, what have been the successes? People want to know this about their organization because that means that they've got an idea of potentially where the organization is going as well. Obviously, you want to cover off brand, values, and mission. This is really, really important, and so many organizations miss this component. Your values are supposed to drive people's behavior in your organization, set their expectations. And so often the values are just sort of overlooked and just glanced on. It's like, oh yeah, you know, our value is integrity, and okay, that's great. What does that mean? Company presence. So rather than having, I guess, an organizational structure, talking about, hey, you know, we're a multinational company, we've got this many staff across the world, is a lot more powerful than, hey, here's our board, or here's our CEO and his management team. Because people go, wow, I'm part of a company that's, you know, got this many people around the world in all these countries. Well, that's exciting. Probably a little bit more exciting than, okay, so this is the CEO who I, in my role, may or may not ever see. And here's the managing directors, which, again, I may or may never actually connect with. So it sort of ends up being slightly irrelevant information. And it's a fine balancing act, because you want to make sure people are aware of who these people are, but not focus so much on that. Focus on that company presence. Yeah, absolutely.
In, Rath, one of the great things with sort of bringing a lot of this digital is you can start getting this information out to the new employee immediately. They're not waiting for the paper, the mail, but you can start embedding video and other really engaging type of media to really give them those welcome messages. You're right. We see a lot of our customers spending a lot of time on creating welcome videos for the employees. It's the first thing they see when they get their job offer is welcome to our family.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, you know, that's another thing. Breaking it down into smaller chunks, you know, all this information doesn't need to potentially be in the one sitting. If this can be broken down over a week, fantastic. Cultural expectations. So that's both organizational expectations. Hey, you know, this is how we generally present ourselves. This is the tone we use with our clients. Obviously, touching on a bit of the policies, kind of going, hey, there are certain expectations we have, and here's, you know, the policies that are relevant. We expect you to kind of look at these and discuss them with your manager. We don't expect you to sit here now and read all of them, but making sure that you set the expectation of these are the policies that guide our culture and behavior. HR fundamentals is pretty much, okay, what are the core things that the new starter will be interested in knowing from a HR perspective? How do I access my pay slips? Who do I talk to in HR if I have some sort of an issue or a question? That's probably about it, really. It's kind of making sure, hey, if you've got a question, this is what you do. Here's the system we use, and you know, you'll generally find that these are the sort of benefits of working for the organisation. Obviously, employee benefits is sort of what I've just touched on then, and additional resources at the end of it. Think of additional resources as the show bag you get to take away after the conference. Everyone loves the show bag because there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that you may or may not use, but it will be useful. I know when I'm at conferences, I grab the show bag and I end up, you know, pretty much my stationery covered for the rest of the year. And it's that same sort of thing. It's stuff that people may use, may not, but it is all beneficial to them in some way, shape, or form, and it gives them the power to do something productive with that material. So that's the sort of topics we generally advise should go in that, I guess, on the induction, you know, that first week messaging, because all these topics build towards engagement, build towards the person feeling that the decision to join the company is a good one, and the company is focused on them. If an organisation demonstrates they are focused on their staff will deliver outcomes. I believe it's Richard Branson that has the quote that it's not customers that come first, it's employees.
Yeah.
If you look after your employees, they'll look after your customers. So that's essentially my bit done as well, which that neatly brings us to, and it's loading up, great, questions. So from here, if anyone has any questions about what we've discussed or questions that perhaps we haven't covered, please feel free to type them out using the question functionality in GoTo. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and read those out and answer them as best as we can. And yeah, so feel free to shoot any questions at us now.
We've answered everyone's questions, does it seem?
Yeah, no, it's very, very quiet in the question room at the moment. Oh, here we go. So, The first question we've got is, do you have any ROI stats to using digital onboarding for existing staff moves? Michael?
I actually do. So we've had one customer, we've had a couple of customers use the HROnboard platform for those internal transfers, or as we call them, crossboarding, play on the word. We've had one customer, Homesglen, TAFE here in Victoria. They used to have to reissue all their teaching contracts every year. They used to have 4 full-time staff spend 2 weeks reissuing, I think it's about 400 or 500 contracts, and now they've reduced that down to 1 staff member in 2 hours. So yeah, using sort of that, and because the other thing is by using sort of a digital platform, you can deliver sort of engagement messages and things like that. So you can get some dramatic ROI using it. We've had another customer, Roy Hill, mining organisation, reissued I think 1,000 contracts within a couple of days using HROnboard versus I think a month-long process. I think was their stat. We've got a webinar actually on our website that Roy Hill actually went through in great detail, sort of the ROI they got out of it, and a lot of it was for that cross-boarding use case.
Okay. We've got another question. This one is, do you think all onboarding can be done online, or must some be face-to-face? I think really, for me, there has to be a face-to-face component to any onboarding process, and that doesn't strictly have to be, I guess, face-to-face in terms of formal. As far as I'm concerned, there should be an element of meeting with the team, discussing stuff with managers, and that's the face-to-face component that I guess is most valuable. So having a new starter complete online material, and then having the manager have a meaningful conversation about what they've done, that's a lot better than, I guess, getting a bunch of people in a room and going, okay, so this is the values of the company. So it's about looking at, okay, what do we need to communicate to this new starter? What's the best way of communicating that? Obviously, if you want to see if they've absorbed the right information and get their thoughts around, what do you think this means in terms of your role, this value, how will you apply it? That's a great conversation to have with a manager. Talking about the history of the organisation is probably less so where, okay, so do you remember what this company did in 1967? Well, yeah, I do. Well, not really too relevant to discuss. So it is a blended approach.
I think you're right, totally, Raf. It's with most talent management activities within an organisation needs a blended approach. Not just onboarding, induction, performance management's another great one where you want to keep the conversations to the valuable part.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A question, so we've got, is it possible to get a copy of the earlier stats? Yes, this webinar will be available after today. It'll be hosted on the respective YouTube channels, so yes, absolutely. Yep. We've got a question, can we please see the system? I've actually got a couple of these. With those, today was probably focused more on the theory, so what I will do is, for everyone who wants to see the system, you'll be able to get in touch with Michael from HROnboard and have a demonstration of how the system works. And
those that don't want to wait for me to be, or one of our guys to be in touch, if you were to throw HROnboard into YouTube, we've got some, I think, a 3-minute demo on there.
Perfect. What do we got next? Is there still a need for any paper-based forms, or can all these be obsolete with an online onboarding system?
Obsolete?
And I think so. I mean, absolutely. It makes life so much easier. Plus, the other thing is, it's kind of, you can end up sending a message to your new starters and go, hey, you'll notice that your whole onboarding process was paperless. And that goes really nicely in terms of, your sustainability message and responsible sort of messaging.
In fact, actually, it's an interesting one. Our product manager, she wants to put in the HROnboard app how many trees an organisation saved around the sustainability message based per onboard, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Here's a long one from David. Our ATS does have an online offer module we use. In this, an applicant is required to accept or decline the offer online. However, we still receive legal advice that we need a signature on paper contract. From a legal perspective, do you know where paper contract is still required?
Well, first of all, I'm not a lawyer. Actually, there's a lot of legal precedence around electronic contract acceptance, and we've got some documentation on our website, not on our main website, on our, I guess, our support website. So it sort of goes through the legal position of that. So what we might do is grab who that is, Raf, and I can send it out directly to that person.
Absolutely. And we've also got another one. This one will be coming your way, Michael. So this one's from Jody, and the question is, does the automation of all forms include the tax form?
Yes, it does.
There you go. That was nice and easy. Well, aside from another question asking if this will be available online, yes, absolutely. We will endeavour to have this up by the end of the week. And then obviously you can have a rewatch of it. All the stats will obviously be in there, and feel free to after that shoot through any additional questions you have. Other than that, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you all. I really hope that all of you got something out of this. As I said, the opportunity here was to both provide insight, but also hopefully plant a whole bunch of questions. And at the end of this, obviously, feel free to contact Michael or myself directly, and we'll be able to answer those questions as needed. We definitely very much enjoy sharing our knowledge. If there's no further questions, as I said, absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And yeah, have a fantastic rest of Wednesday and rest of week.
Thank you.